Today, we embark on a journey into the life of Marguerite Alibert, a woman whose name was whispered through the most scandalous circles of early 20th century Europe. Born into modest beginnings, Marguerite would rise to become a French socialite, a courtesan to royalty, and ultimately a murderer. Her story is entwined with a prince, a philandering husband, and a trial that shook the foundations of both French and British high society. So pull up a chair and let us unravel the events that led this beguiling woman to commit a crime most foul. Marguerite was born in Paris in 1890 into circumstances as unremarkable as they come. Her parents worked laborious jobs, her mother a housekeeper and her father a coachman. But Marguerite, ambitious and headstrong, had no intention of living a life of hardship. Early in her adolescence, she was sent to a convent called the Sisters of Mary, after her parents blamed her for the death of her younger brother. The tragic event being that she was babysitting him when he ran into the street and was hit by a lorry. At the boarding school, Marguerite fell into further hardship as she experienced extensive physical and emotional harm at the hands of the nuns. By the age of 16, her life took another dramatic turn when she became pregnant and gave birth to Raymonde, a baby girl out of wedlock, a scandalous event in itself at the time. She claimed the father was the son of a nobleman. His parents were less than enthused that he had gotten a commoner pregnant and so forbade him from marrying Marguerite. She found herself expelled from the convent and, unable to support the newborn, her parents sent Raymonde away to be raised by a family in the French countryside. With her rocky upbringing behind her, Marguerite soon found herself drawn into the demi-monde of Paris, a realm of courtesans and wealthy men, where she quickly discovered her ability to captivate and manipulate. Her beauty, wit, and ruthless ambition made her stand out, allowing her to cultivate relationships with wealthy suitors who lavished her with luxuries that would have been unimaginable in her earlier years. By 1907, she had fully entered the world of high society sex work, where her lovers were no longer ordinary men, but influential figures of the French elite. One of her most notable affairs was with André Mella, a wine merchant twice her age, who showered her with gifts and large sums of money. For 6 years she lived in opulence, taking Mella's last name and convincing onlookers they were married. Yet despite the wealth, the relationship soured, and Marguerite yearned for more. Her ambition and beauty would soon attract the attention of an even more illustrious client, Edward, Prince of Wales and future King of the United Kingdom. In 1917, during World War I, Marguerite and Edward embarked on a passionate affair while he was stationed in France. Though their romance would last only a year, its consequences would reverberate for decades. The young and impressionable prince was smitten with Marguerite. Their relationship was not merely one of fleeting infatuation, but one fueled by the mutual attraction to excitement and danger. Edward, in particular, was rebelling against the stifling constraints of royal life. During their brief affair, he wrote numerous letters to his lover, pouring his heart into words that, unbeknownst to him, would later become invaluable to Marguerite. He eventually moved on to new lovers, but Marguerite was not the sort to accept her dismissal lightly. She held on to the letters, which contained not only expressions of affection but also sensitive information about the war effort and negative comments about other royal family members. Although Edward attempted to have the letters burned, his confidant was not successful, and Marguerite held onto the bargaining chips tightly. Writing to a friend, Edward put his frustrations into words. "Oh, those bloody letters! How I curse myself now, though only if I can square this case it will be the last one, as she's the only woman I've ever written to." Luckily for him, Marguerite continued to climb the social ladder, eventually marrying an Egyptian prince and putting her ideas of blackmail on the back burner. In 1921, she met and soon married Ali Fahmy Bey, a wealthy Egyptian playboy who frequented the European social scene. Fahmy, though 10 years younger and besotted with Marguerite, had traditional views about marriage, expecting his wife to adopt Egyptian customs, including modest dress and subservience. His new wife, ever the independent and progressive woman, refused to comply, setting the stage for a volatile and unhappy marriage. Ali, perhaps in retaliation for his new wife's refusal to conform, took on other wives, and Marguerite found herself trapped in a marriage without recourse to divorce. The relationship became harmful, with frequent public arguments and physical altercations, causing their friends and enemies to nickname them the Fighting Fahmys. Unbeknownst to high-tiered diplomats, Ali was not actually royal. His father had the respectable title of Bey, meaning governor, so the couple embellished with little white lies and eventually commandeered enough respect to be referred to as Prince and Princess Fahmy. Marguerite's aim was to have the marriage fail quickly with a nice financial payoff. However, the plan failed miserably. While lovers had been jealous in the past, Ali took matters into his own hands, claiming that he could tame the headstrong young woman. In one letter to Marguerite's sister Yvonne, Ali wrote, "Just now I am engaged in training her. Yesterday, to begin with, I did not come in to lunch or to dinner, and I also left her at the theatre." With women, one must act with energy and be severe. No bad habits. The letter was most likely meant to cause a laugh, but also revealed some of the tensions in Ali's mind. It was obvious that he felt like he needed to control his wife. On the 9th of July 1923, while the couple was staying at London's high-profile Savoy Hotel, the tension between them reached a tragic climax. After watching the theatre show The Merry Widow, the pair was seen walking back to the Savoy when a street performer asked Marguerite if she would like to hear some music. To his dismay, she told him she did not, due to the fact that her husband was planning to end her life that night. As they headed back into their hotel room, a particularly vicious argument broke out. At around 2:30 a.m., hotel staff reported hearing gunshots ring out. Entering the Fahmy's room, they discovered Marguerite making no attempt to run after shooting her husband 3 times from behind with a pistol, bullets hitting him in the neck, back, and head. Her arrest quickly followed while Ali was rushed to hospital, where he would succumb to his wounds. Marguerite's trial commenced on the 10th of September 1923 at the Old Bailey, one of London's most famous courts. There, before a crowded gallery, she was to face the charge of murder, the gravest of accusations. It was a case like no other, attracting crowds that spilled out onto the streets, clamouring for a glimpse of the courtroom action. The British press, as well as international media, descended upon the proceedings, eager to chronicle every sordid detail. Marguerite's defence was spearheaded by the formidable Sir Edward Marshall Hall, a barrister whose reputation for theatrics and eloquence was well known. He was no stranger to high-profile murder cases, and in Marguerite's defence, he would once again put his considerable skills to the test. The prosecution, meanwhile, was led by Sir Travers Humphreys, an equally accomplished legal mind, tasked with proving that Marguerite had deliberately and premeditatedly killed her husband. The case appeared open and shut, at least on the surface, but as in all such affairs, appearances can be deceiving. Sir Edward aimed to prove his client had acted in self-defence, a victim of repeated abuse at the hands of her tyrannical husband. Her counsel portrayed Ali as a violent man, one who had subjected Marguerite to both physical and psychological cruelty throughout their marriage. A vivid picture emerged of a marriage filled with abuse, one where Ali's controlling nature, exacerbated by his traditional views on a wife's obedience, led to violent outbursts. One of the most damning aspects of the defence's case was Marguerite's claim that Ali had forced her into unnatural intimate acts, an accusation that was considered scandalous in the extreme. Though these allegations shocked the courtroom, they were crucial in framing Marguerite as the victim in the relationship, a woman pushed to the brink by her husband's depravity and entirely out of her depth in Ali's world. They painted her as the quintessential European socialite, ill-suited to the violent temperament and cultural expectations of an Egyptian husband. The prosecution, meanwhile, sought to characterize Marguerite as a manipulative woman, one who had married Ali for his wealth and had ultimately murdered him to rid herself of the man she had grown to despise. Marguerite's testimony was compelling, her demeanour that of a tragic figure who had been driven to desperate measures. Sir Edward Marshall Hall masterfully guided the jury through evidence as sympathy for the defendant rose. But the defence was steeped in unethical behaviour. From discourse regarding a homosexual relationship to racial stereotyping, many of the arguments made in the courtroom were vile comments that would never be allowed in today's modern judicial system. However, looming in the background of this high drama was another, more subtle narrative. The possibility that this trial was not merely about the death of Ali Fahmy Bey, but about protecting the reputation of the future King of England. The infamous letters that not only declared his love for a prostitute, but also indiscreet comments about the prince's family and sensitive military information from the First World War. It is whispered, and with good reason, that the British establishment was eager to see Marguerite acquitted, lest these letters come to light. Indeed, her eventual acquittal on the 15th of September 1923 was seen by many as a foregone conclusion, though the jurors could not have known about the shadow of royal scandal hanging over the case. After just half an hour of deliberation, they returned with their verdict: not guilty. The courtroom erupted in applause as Marguerite was declared a free woman. Yet for all the public spectacle and the legal manoeuvring, the verdict was not the end of the story. Though Marguerite escaped the gallows, she failed to secure any of her late husband's considerable fortune. Under Egyptian law, she had no claim to his assets, leaving her in a precarious financial situation. Returning to Paris, she attempted to resume her life as a socialite, but her reputation as a murderess and her dwindling finances left her increasingly isolated from the circles she once commanded. The years following the trial were not kind to her. Though she never publicly mentioned the letters again, their shadow loomed over her until her death in 1971. She lived out her remaining years in relative obscurity, a once prominent figure, now a relic of a bygone era. In the twilight of the 20th century, Marguerite's grandson disclosed the existence of a clandestine deal that had been struck during her 1923 murder trial. According to him, a pact was forged behind closed doors involving powerful figures determined to protect the British royal family from scandal. The proof? Marguerite's own words in her private diaries, now in her grandson's possession. The deal, he explained, hinged on one crucial condition. Should Marguerite be acquitted of the murder of her husband, Ali Fahmy Bey, she would agree to destroy all the letters she had received from Edward, Prince of Wales. The fear that these letters might be exposed to the public was too great a risk for the British establishment to bear. So with that, a deal was made. Historians, including Andrew Rose, who delved deeply into the case, have pointed to this revelation as strong evidence that Marguerite's trial was, in many ways, a carefully orchestrated spectacle. Rose, in his thorough research, laid bare the layers of political and personal interests that intersected in this sensational trial, cementing the notion that the law itself had been influenced by forces beyond the court's purview. In many ways, this secret deal echoes the sentiment expressed by Oscar Wilde in The Picture of Dorian Gray. The only way to get rid of a temptation is to yield to it. While Marguerite yielded to temptation, holding on to those letters for years, the royal family and its allies, fearful of temptation's consequences, sought to erase the potential for public scandal. The destruction of the letters was the final stroke that ensured the veil of secrecy would remain intact. Andrew Rose's revelation reinforced a long-held suspicion that Marguerite's acquittal was not solely the result of a skilled legal defence, but rather a product of deeper machinations designed to preserve the dignity of the British monarchy. Marguerite Alibert's story is a stark reminder of the power dynamics that existed between men, women, the wealthy, the poor, and minorities in the 1920s. Women like Marguerite, who dared to defy societal norms, were often judged harshly. But Marguerite's relationship with Edward undoubtedly shielded her from the worst consequences of her actions. Ali's background as a Middle Eastern man was used against him, regardless of his supposed actions. Marguerite's acquittal was as much a reflection of her shrewdness as it was of the lengths to which the British establishment would go to protect one of its own. Thank you for watching. Right then, take care, and I'll see you next time with another story to make you say, well, I never.